David, tell me about your experience at the ashram.
So we went to India. I think we were going for 3 weeks. It was more of a backpacking holiday with our child, my wife and my child. And before we went, my wife said, yeah, let's go to an ashram. And I didn't really know what an ashram was, but I was like, yeah, sounds fantastic. Let's go to an ashram. And it wasn't until we got there that I realized this was 10,000 people on Amma's ashram. And there was just this sense of overwhelming sense of flow. Everything just moved in time with itself. And I would be sitting next to a Harvard professor, taking a break over there, 1 minute listening to a conversation about astrophysics, to the next minute be sitting with a group of individuals from the poorest part of India that come to pay homage. And what I found is that if I let myself, which it was very unusual for me, I was out of my comfort zone, but I let myself get into this state of flow. And when I arrived there, when I allowed myself, and I gave myself permission to do it, amazing things began to happen. Not just ideas, not random ideas, but ideas that carried clarity of the idea and the execution of how I'd actually perform it, the idea. And I've never let go of the ashram experience, and I find myself, and possibly a massive mistake, but I found myself occasionally talking to a client and they're setting an objective or a challenge to me, and I found myself saying, well, I'm going to go and meditate on that. Now, I'm not an expert in meditation, but what I'd mean is I'm going to take that challenge and I'm going to clear my mind of everything but that challenge and see where we go and try and get into that flow. I don't know if that explained it, Ian. I'm not an expert in this field, and so maybe...
No, I'm just curious about the ashram experience, because I've never been to an ashram or had that experience, but I think there's something about the time in which we're living now, May 2020. A friend said to me last week on a Zoom call, he said it felt like, we were all kind of standing naked on stage, that we'd all gone back to kind of basics and the two-edged thing of being vulnerable, but also having clarity about who we really are and what really matters. And I'm really relating to that, identifying with that at the moment. And I'm just curious about whether your experience with that in the ashram of kind of getting unplugged, going off the grid and just being in flow, which sounds great, whether you're finding that are you finding that any kind of quiet of the current state where because you're not traveling around, because you're not going to an office? I know you're running a business, you're doing it from home as we all are, but are you finding those pockets of calm and quiet reflection?
I wish I could say, of course I am in, I have no travel. I thought I would. Let's go back. The first couple of weeks of lockdown were not panic, but sadly huge amounts of concern, anxiety levels. There was unknown unknowns, and they weren't looking good. And then there was a couple of weeks, well, actually, I think we can manage this. Clients, we were all able to operate together. We found the best way to manage that. And then we moved to this point, and I've heard you say, Ian, of huge amounts of guilt. And it's actually, I quite like having my family around, and it's a sunny day today here, and I can hear the bells pealing somewhere off in the distance. Why isn't it always like this? Looking at the sky, there are no planes carving up the sky. It's beautiful. The air's clearer. And now we're at this point, and like you say, now we're all naked on the stage. And I wish I could say I've had lots of time for these great moments of clarity. I believe you've got to engineer these moments of clarity. And if you are not a yogi, if you're not naturally gifted or trained in the arts of meditation, then you've got to shake things up a little bit, right? I think of it like a can of a bottle of sparkling drink. If you just open it, it's going to hiss away for ages. But if you shake it really hard, it will just all boom out, and then it will settle. And it'll get to a nice settle. And I feel I have to do that. And there's several ways I can do it. I can do it through exercise. I could do some vigorous exercise, and that kind of shakes it out. I could go out of my comfort zone and try and do something that I'm not gifted at and have not naturally done before. That's two ways I can get to it. I could probably just actually sit down and try and make it happen, but I find that I need these opposite poles of what turns out to be the same thing. And I find if I really shake it up at one end, I can get a calm at the other. That's me. Yeah, that may not be for everyone, but I'm happy to do that one. So the experience of going to the ashram was way out of my comfort zone. It was boiling hot. I didn't realize there was going to be 10,000 people all here at the same time, trying to operate in this whole new ecosystem that I wasn't used to. And that shook me up a bit. And then from that came this real sense of calm. And I feel like these last 8 weeks we've been shaken up, and now we've got to find our way of getting to the calm, because when we get to that calm comes the flow. When we get to that flow comes ideas and thoughts that can take us from where we are to a place we've never been before, a place of excitement. And we know that we are encapsulated in a universe of ultimate possibilities. We know that. So we owe it to ourselves, to our clients, to our families, to our neighbors, to unlock some of that capacity now, tap into it, and find out where we can take ourselves onto this next level. Because no one will do it for us. You can't buy an app to do that. It starts within. And for me personally, it's a story, always been a story of shaking the bottle really hard till the cork just explodes. And then when it settles, there's this moment where there's this clarity that unlocks ideas that I could have never imagined myself having. And get out of that comfort zone. I try and come out of the comfort zone every year. My idea, and COVID-19 has done it for me this year. But usually in years where our tomorrows were like yesterdays, then I engineered something to happen. And whether that be the survival course that was pretty harsh. In all fairness, I was the only non-military person on the survival course. And when I realized that everyone had a military background, and I said, well, why are you doing this? Don't you do this in your day job? They said, oh, boy, we don't do anything like you're going to experience over the next few days. Right? As a wood pigeon was thrown to my feet and I was told to skin it, extract the breasts and cook them on an open fire. Right? That was how it begun. Yeah, the whole thing begins with the scenario that you've been in a plane crash and you're the only survivors. We are going to tell you survival techniques and you're going to operate on them.
You paid for this?
I didn't pay. It was a birthday gift. Some cool after it. And it's an amazing experience. But off the back of that, driving back from that experience, I was in this incredible state where I was. All possibilities seemed possible. And we know that it's very rare that we really get into that state. Mainly, we are dealing with the fire that's in front of us or what's going on around us. And that idea of all possibilities are possible right now. And accepting it and believing it and feeling it and going into that flow, ideas really start to come. And you need to find that way, and whether that be going for the run. And you know what it's like. You're on that run, and once you've done some cognitive dumps and got all the initial sort of things out of your head, then it starts to, the ideas begin to come together. Or whether it be pushing yourself. I did stand-up comedy 1 year as my pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and I can remember the crystallized moment for me was 2 acts before I was going on. The event organizer came over to me and said, "Are you nervous?" I said, yeah, I'm pretty nervous. And he said, well, if you don't want to go on, it's okay. It's not like you're famous and anyone's going to notice. I'll just skip over it and jump to the next one. And in that moment, I had the perfect narrative to go with every ounce of common sense that existed in me. To just say, yeah, all right, I'll come back in a couple of weeks and try again. And I fought it and I did it. And did I enjoy it? I have no idea if I enjoyed it. I did it and everyone clapped and they laughed at all the right places. So that was good. But again, off the back of it, I had this experience of all possibilities are possible. And new ideas came to me.
Well, that's wonderful, because what I love about us human beings is how different we are. You're talking about these experiences of highs and your language about moments of explosiveness and explosion that have given you that sense of clarity and that sense of flow. And I suppose for me, it's not that actually. I think for me, sometimes it's about kind of interiority, you know, looking within, spending time quietly, thinking about my own journey, my own story that I often have found, especially in the last few weeks, that I've found has been really revealing about giving me those aha moments. And also, and you're right, you've got to create it, you've got to kind of contrive it. It's not just suddenly going to happen. You know, if you're listening to this thinking, hang on, I haven't had any sense of this clarity of the lockdown because I've just been worried about so much different stuff going on. I mean, it's not suddenly just gonna come in a flash. You have to work at it.
You have to engineer it.
You have to engineer it.
No one will do it for you. There's always this thought that oh yeah, well, this opportunity will present itself, or this will happen. You have to grab the bottle out of the fridge, shake it really hard and take the lid off if you want an explosion of energy to come out of the top of the bottle. It will not open the fridge itself, roll across the floor to you and take the lid off. It just doesn't happen that way. And I think that's the point I was trying to get across here. And it is, for me, I appreciate how hard I have to push against something for it to happen. For someone who is a natural yogi or meditates on a regular basis, I'm sure they're able to slip into that calm very easily. And I'm envious of that in some ways because I don't have that skill.
Yeah.
Maybe one day it will come to me. So I guess I'm appealing to those people that feel like me. How come calm doesn't just arrive? How come I can't seem to meditate? How come my mind is always busy? Well, here's a technique to break that the way it's always been. Here's a technique. Grab hold of the bottle, shake it so hard that the atoms are exploding to come out. And then guess what happens once they've had their outpouring? They're all going to calm. And you're going to get to this sort of net neutral, this zone where there is a calm. And that's, you can ride that stillness that you've created. Now, you were talking in, and for you, it seems a lot more like you can go to a place of calm. You can switch that on and off. True.
Yeah, I think the lockdown has forced me to be a lot more self-sufficient. You know, we have a constraint, don't we? Now, you know, we used to live in a world where, well, right or wrong, it's not too cool, really, is that for 35 quid, cheaper than the cost of a railway ticket to your city, I can go 5 minutes to an airport over there and I can go to Amsterdam for 35 quid for a day on a cheap flight. And Amsterdam was this place that I found was a place that always fueled me. And the wonderful thing about knowing when something works, or there's a habit or there's a behavior that is productive or fruitful, is you just keep on doing it again. So every time I got a bit stale in my work life, I could treat myself maybe twice a year to jump on a plane. There's a 7 o'clock flight out of London Southend Airport. I'll be in the centre of Amsterdam by 9:30 in the morning, come back on the evening flight, walk around, take my camera, take a notebook, sit in cafes, drink some great coffee, have a glass of, and I'd come back with a full notepad. I'll be like invincible. I was like my superpower. And for some reason, a combination of the city, the act of travel, the canals, the architecture, you know, you put all that together and it was like this killer package. I can't go to Amsterdam anymore. I can't go to Amsterdam at the moment. So, you know, it's harder within our four walls, within lockdown, to try and find those moments.
So what was going on there when you went to Amsterdam, really, is that you'd taken the Ian Sanders front door window sign and you turned it from open to closed. Because you had this narrative running now, right? I'm in Amsterdam. I had a narrative running. I'm in an ashram in India. You can't phone me and talk about these things. I'm not there. So how do we, knowing that we need to do something to engineer this to make it happen? And I foolishly thought a few weeks ago that the lockdown would do this to me. I will naturally move into this flow. It's designed to happen, but it's not been happening. I haven't been in this great flow. So we need to engineer within these four walls. We don't have the opportunity to go to Amsterdam. I don't have the opportunity to go to an ashram. Boy, I'd love to be in an ashram right now. So how, with these constraints, do we engineer it? How do we get to that calm, to that peace? And I talked about, you know, there is the running, there is listening to meditative music. For me right now, the thing I've found is going out into the garden at night and staring at the stars. I don't know if it's because the atmosphere is cleaner, but I'm watching satellites go by every night and it's beautiful. It's like, you know, it's like driving up the M4 in the evening and heading towards London from the south, and you see all the planes coming into land at London Heathrow and they're stacked up like they're, you know, ready to come in. It's like that. It goes a satellite this way, it goes a and there's something really calming about that idea that this is all going on around me and I'm this little dot and I can get some calm there. But we can't rely on lockdown to bring us that state of calm where we're resonating and our best ideas are flowing. We each as individuals must understand how we engineer it. And if the engineering of it is now not possible because the aircraft to Amsterdam isn't available to jump on, how will we do it in this new space? What are we going to do? And it needs setting up the same way Amsterdam needed setting up. You needed to confirm with the family it was okay for timing. You needed to plan it in your diary to make sure that any work commitments were taken care of. You had to pack some suitable clothing to travel to. It's exactly the same. We've got to engineer it here. We've got to say, right, tonight I'm going to sit under the stars. I'm going to need the warm blanket. I'm going to need to make sure everyone knows what I'm doing. I'm going to need some coffee to keep it going. You know, whatever it is, we've got to plan it. We've got to unplan it, if you like, but get on and do it. And we've got to do it with a commitment and a commitment to do it and an understanding that it won't happen on its own.
You're right. I think, and I think it's about slowing down, isn't it? It's about flipping the sign on the shop window to say closed for a couple of hours. Our business is closed. Our role is closed. Whatever. To spend that time. The travel writer Pico Iyer, you know, has a lovely way of talking about it, is that, you know, we're never going to see these things when we're always in motion. And our lives are always in motion. We're always in motion. I've spent my whole life in motion, and I have found amongst the chaos and amongst the uncertainty, amongst the this time is an opportunity where we're not in motion. And that's where you can slow down and take a look at what really happens. And whether that's going for a run, looking at the stars, doing some journaling, you know, some you know, thinking about some really important questions. You know, what have you learned? What are you feeling? You know, what do you want the next chapter of your story to be? You know, these little things between you and your notepad that you can just find some time. But you're not gonna have those moments if you don't invest the time. I know it's easy for you and I to say this because we're more entrepreneurial. Some people are under a lot of pressure working for an employer where they're not going to get any time for that. And so let's be realistic. You might have to have that time, make that time at the weekend. we have a bit more freedom the way we're the lucky ones in terms of how we manage our work life. But don't expect to have those moments unless you create the time. And it's what we call deep work. Deep work.
Yeah.
Cal Newport called deep work in his book. The idea of deep work, you can't do deep work with distractions. You can't do deep work with this going off. Oh, I'm just going to check. Oh, I'm changing Spotify. You can't do that. You've got to be realistic about the work that really matters. Thinking about all these things we've been talking about today is that, you've got to invest the time and get in the right mind space. If you're feeling irritable, that's not the right time to do it. You're going to have to come back and do it some other time. If you're feeling distracted because you're waiting and expecting on a call, that is not the right time to do it. And it's like it's a lot inputs and outputs, isn't it? You've got to feed yourself quality in order to have that clarity out. So you got to be healthy. You got to be in a good space. Have done some exercise and all those kind of things. And I think, like you, David, I was naive in the first couple of weeks, thinking this is automatically going to happen in this process.
Yeah.
And then I realised, oh no, it's not as simple as that. And the other thing I realised, which sometimes I get a bit impatient with, it's going to take time. I don't have all the answers yet. What are we week 8 of lockdown? I've lost count. I thought I might have the answers about the next chapter in the story, exactly where I'm going next, and I don't. And I think that also is all right to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm working at it. I need to be patient. I need to see what happens. But it's all right to say, I know we're in a period of flux. I know things won't be the same again. I know my business, career, professional offering, products and services are going to change. I know I need to be comfortable with that change, but right here, right now, I can't tell you exactly what the changes are. That's all right, okay?
Yeah.
And I think being honest with ourselves about that is part of how we navigate this flux. And I think the ashram story and indeed the Amsterdam story are useful touchstones for both of us about what works for us. And you're right, we can take some elements of what was present in that experience and what now can we do under lockdown to try and replicate a sense of that. Part of my own process, which I know I've talked about before, has been going through all my old journals, going through all my old photograph albums. And in a way, that's not just been a self-indulgent nostalgia trip down memory lane. It's actually been about unearthing and uncovering the things that really mattered to me, holding up a mirror. It's like I've been on a journey of exploration and reflection without walking around the canals of Amsterdam, but being here in my attic, I've been able to do that because I have these artifacts, photographs, scrapbook from when I was 18 going to Amsterdam, all these journals. And it feels like I'm kind of, if you put me in the mastermind chair, David, my specialist subject would be Ian, because I've been spending a lot of time in a scholarly way thinking about all those things. And for me, that is maybe like my ashram experience. That is what's unlocking ideas. I find after those periods is where I go, you wrote this down 10 years ago. Well, that was present in your 23-year-old self. I hadn't realized that now. And those bits are going to be present in your next chapter. It's kind of like putting all those things together. We have to be self-sufficient, don't we?
And we have to be willing to reverse engineer what would have been a trip to Amsterdam into our worlds today. You're blessed you've got that space there that you can work in, that you can close the door on and stick anything you like on the wall. Not everyone has that opportunity, but everyone has had some place or experience they've had where they felt like they were in flow, and they can't go there now. But what was it that gave them that sense, and how can they reverse engineer it into, like you say, maybe a few hours on a weekend, but sit down and structure out and get it ready so they can do it? Because I think one of the things I'd like to come out of this dreadful experience for so many people is a little bit of a better understanding of myself. And I think 8 weeks in, I've realized that doesn't happen automatically. that will take some effort by me to make it happen. And I love that idea you talked about, being a scholar of yourself. It was brave of you to say that as well, because we don't like to talk about ourselves, right? We blow our own trumpets. It's not a British thing to do. I think it's an important thing, that it would be a shame that if we go through all of this experience and we don't come out knowing ourselves a bit better than we did going in. This is one thing we can do amongst all the chaos and the sadness and all the things we do not know yet are to come.
So you have a glimpse of that, David, about understanding yourself better, or not yet?
Not yet. I think I wish I did. I thought I'd, as I've said, I thought it was going to just naturally fall into my lap and I'd find myself in this more of a Zen-like state. And that's when I began to realize that I need to lean into it, like everything in life. And the more I put in, the more I'm going to get out. And I wanted to share with people this message that now is the time we have got to step up our game and look for those places where we've had that moment of flow, where we've seen the bigger picture, we've seen what all the possibilities are, and engineer it now so that it happens for us. Because this is the time. Now is the time. Today is the time to do it.
And I think if people need a nudge, I mean, there's, dive into books. There's a lot of books that weren't written for this time, but are enormously valuable for this time. Jerry Colonna, we've mentioned his work before, Reboot, Art of Leadership and Growing Up, a great book about thinking about some of the themes we've talked about today. So, don't expect that you're suddenly going to conjure these things up yourself. You're going to need some nudges and prompts. You're going to need some other things to help you and go what you need to. But I love this theme, because you're right. It's not about being narcissistic. It's about having a better understanding of who we really are, so that we can rebuild and move forward. And without sounding too cheesy about it, be better people. And I think
we've got to. Yeah, I don't think it's cheesy. I think we should all aspire to be better people. We should all aspire to do that, and we should recognise what the steps are for us individuals to become better people. For me, I have to shake myself into literal fright, whether it be standing on a stage to do stand-up comedy or finding myself in whatever it is on a course with commandos doing night maneuvers, whatever that thing is, I find that takes me to the place. That doesn't have to be for everyone, but we must recognize what is the thing that moves us to that point where we can go, now I am in flow, I'm listening to the inner self, and from that only a better version of me can appear.
It's like that naked on stage thing. I don't want to mix it up. I'm not suggesting you go and do some stand-up comedy naked, but that sense of feeling naked on stage it does feel raw and real, and it also feels alive, and it also feels vulnerable, and it also feels a bit scary. But what I love about that sense of being naked on stage is like, this is real me. Take it or leave it. This is me. I'm nothing else. I've no mask. I'm not hiding behind anything. And it does feel alive. And I think for me, what I'm taking out of this period is to remind me about those moments of times of what I would call aliveness, right? Doing this with you, being on the beach this morning, sitting in the sun for 5 minutes while I'm grilling some burgers on the barbecue at the weekend. I know I'm grateful that I've got all those things. I'm not doing a 14-hour shift in accident emergency. I'm not driving a bus. I know I have to speak through a lens of, privilege in terms of where I am right now. I'm not going to deny, as indeed you've acknowledged, all the suffering that's going on in the world, that here we are. Oh, isn't it lovely? We're thinking about our futures. But there is that opportunity, isn't there? And I don't think we should feel any guilt about that, because it's about personal development. It's about self-discovery, and it's about It is a rare opportunity. I know these are all kind of cliches, but it isn't going to happen again when we have the opportunity to be doing this. You know, we don't work in organizations. You know, my uncle worked for an American organization. I always remember, you know, he had a 6-month sabbatical when he'd been there 10 years. He went off traveling, you know, amazing. We don't have organizations and employers like that anymore. And you're not going to get that handed to you on a plate. So amongst this uncertainty, amongst that, oh my goodness, what's happening next month? We do have a chance. And I would just urge people to try and invest some time in that and see what comes.
And I wonder if it's also that it feels like we're going through a reboot as a nation, as a world, as individuals. And maybe that's why we've found ourselves speaking about this morning, Ian, is we sense that, and it's important that as individuals we put ourselves in the best position that we are managing our own reboot, because is it the same David Slolly that's needed at the other side of this? Possibly. But I'll check myself.
Yeah. So let's not take anything for granted and think about what emerges and what changes, and that opportunity for renewal and for rebirth. Yeah. And if we figure it's the status quo, fine. But I think for you and me, we're different than that. I want to use this as an opportunity to reboot, because I know that the things that I normally get energy from and I normally invoice people for, standing on stage in front of an audience, ain't going to happen. It might happen in November, it might happen next January, but right here, right now, it ain't happening. So I need to reboot my own professional offering. And as part of that, the basis of that is thinking about me kind of rebooting personally. And I think that's a lot of us have that opportunity. And, I wish everyone good luck with it.
And we always end by saying, what did we learn? I want to kick in right now and say what I've learned. Ian, thank you so much for sharing with me and being brave and saying how you will look at and question the real Ian Sanders. I think that's something that me personally, I'm almost like this abstract thing out there, and I'm like, oh, don't worry about him. And no, it's time I do think about him, and I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to treat myself with the respect and ask the kind of questions that I would ask someone else when I'm showing them respect. Now, I'm going to do that same journey on myself that I would happily do for a client with gusto and enthusiasm. I'm going to do that on myself. But thank you for sharing that with me, Ian. That's really useful.
Well, thank you for reflecting. That's great. I think, what I learned was that I thought, about 12 people would go to an ashram, not 2,000.
10,000.
10,000. And then I never knew that my friend David, had skinned a woodpecker. Was it a woodpecker? What was it?
It was a wood pigeon.
Wood pigeon. Right.
And then the next day was a rabbit.
So David's cooking lunch today. But no, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing those stories, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.